All right, I'd like to call to order special meeting for October 26, 2016. We do have everyone in attendance. The agenda is pretty straightforward, 3 business items, no closed session. The business items have to do with the Main Street Advisory Board, potential discussion and game plan on updates to rules and procedures, and then a discussion on relationships and protocol of the Town Board of Commissioners. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. So one quick comment, I want to make it a point of record. We called this meeting within the last week, and Kurt White had already had tickets to a play or something that he could not switch those. Wife comes before special meetings, so he wishes he could be here, but he unfortunately couldn't be. Okay, I want to get one question out of the way first. The OAC committee, and you can see it up on the board, had asked the question about confidentiality, privacy. They think they would prefer to operate in closed session, et cetera, et cetera. If you lived in South Carolina or we lived in South Carolina, we would be able to do it. North Carolina statute is very clear that it expressly states that a public body may not consider qualifications for appointment in closed session. So we must discuss these things in open session. And furthermore, when we modified and adopted the application, application at the bottom expressly states that the application is a public record and subject to North Carolina's public records law, NCGS 132-1. So appreciate the question. I realize we're 2 miles from South Carolina, but we can't move the border. We need to operate under this this protocol, okay? So they asked and answered. With that, we have a list of applicants for the Main Street Advisory Board that tonight we are considering. And in the first step in that process, and the list is up in front of everybody, first step in that process, the OAC has met and would like for whomever's representing you tonight to come to the podium and share with us and then discuss with us and take questions from us about your assessment, comments, et cetera. So, Don, are you leading the charge? You got the support of the whole team there. Okay, great. Thank you all for being here tonight. And for purposes of clarity, the list is in alphabetical order.
Mayor Maher, Board of Commissioners, Manager Wood, Attorney Spencer, Town Clerk Sheeler, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here to speak to y'all on behalf of the OAC members that are present, Dave Koziak, Earl Cook, and Terry Settle. We have met and reviewed the applications given to us. And I must say that a big thank you goes to the town clerk and deputy clerk for the work that they did putting all of this together and having it organized in such an organized manner to which we could flow through in a very timely manner with the information that we needed. We discussed each individual application thoroughly. We looked at the Main Street Advisory Board rules, what you were looking for, etc. We vetted the applications. We've had interviews. We've scanned social media. We've done everything we could, like we've done before with other committees, to try to pick the best selection to present to you for your consideration and for your approval. I'd like to start out first with Brian Allen. We feel that he's not for this committee but can be used for another committee, so we'll keep that application. Susan Davis, this is a very, very, very highly skilled individual. If you take a look, if you studied her resume, she's been a director of Columbia College Entrepreneur Center for Women. She has been in planning and finance. She is a consultant for strategic business solutions. She understands business, understands economic development, and what needs to be done. And so therefore, we say that this is a solid candidate that we present to you. Next is Sandra Digman. Sandra Digman is the Vice President of SunTrust Bank, and she deals in retail banking. She is new to the community. If any of you have had the opportunity to go to Apex, she was involved in the Apex Main Street program up there and the things that they did. She's very involved in the community, civic clubs, etc. Even her whole family is involved, from her husband to her daughter. Now her daughter's gone to college, so as she says, we're empty nesters. So we highly recommend Sandra Digman as a solid candidate for you to look at. Bob Dussinger, some of you know Bob. We feel like we probably use him on another committee. Shane Frazier. Shane Frazier is a millennial. He has his own business. It's called SNA Today. He does a lot of business here in Waxhaw. And he is an outstanding young man, individual. Been on the WBA board, the Waxhaw Entrepreneurs Board, heavily involved with businesses and their success of digital marketing and all of the broadcast. So we feel like we've got recommending another solid candidate. What can we say about Neil Guyman? I think everybody knows the success of Dream Chasers Brewery and what Neil has done. It's been over a 5-year journey for him to get where he's at today, and there's never a day goes by that there's not a lot of cars around there and people really enjoying the fact that we now have a brewery in Waxhaw. Tim Giovanelli. Tim understands the real estate of the town. If you take a look at the building that he built, it is similar to what is characteristic of what I think the town wants, or we think the town wants. And we know that he works really well with Kurt, and we feel like that's a match for what you're looking for. So we consider him a solid candidate. Robert Kellum is with Bank of America. He's a financial person there. That's a possible, because there's more to be filled than what we've got solid candidates for. David Cloth, he's been on several boards and committees here in Waxhaw. He's got a financial background. He too could be a possible. Dave Kobziak, the OAC lucked out on this one. Dave is highly skilled, but we feel like he is what we need to really complete the OAC. So, Dave, we thank you for staying on. Craig Miller. Craig Miller works very closely out at Southern Style with Marcy Pageant. If you notice his big orange signs out there, he's got Conterra Homes. He's got a keen eye for design. He understands business, understands finance, understands real estate, and knows how to put a project together. So we think that he is a good candidate for you also to look at. He's a good, solid candidate. Carol Robbins, after talking and looking and analyzing what you've put before us to use, we feel that there's other committees that she might be considered for when the time is right. Laura Rogers, this was a real find here when that application come from Melody and from Kathy. She has experience with Main Street in Lexington. She's a valuable asset that was our gain, Lexington's loss. She has been a marketing coordinator in Lexington with Main Street on top of that, and she is a good, solid candidate. The next one is Roy Sansbury, commercial real estate and home real estate. I believe everybody knows Roy here in town. Has farm in,
estates.
real estate, so he's a good, solid candidate. Nick Tarleton. Nick Tarleton's the Vice President of Lending with Regions Bank. He also has rental property here in Waxhaw. He was on the ERC committee prior to it being dissolved. He's also a possible. Jim Weiland. Jim Weiland's a 44-year person with IBM. Jim was a former ERC member. He's on the board of the Waxhaw Entrepreneurs, and he's the president of Charlotte SCORE. And those of you that may or may not be familiar with SCORE is a division of the Small Business Administration that has its members certified as certified business mentors to work with businesses who are in business or entrepreneurs that want to start a business, from the business plan all the way to the opening of the business. In fact, Neil Gaiman was a SCORE client, just so you'll know. And we are actually seeing SCORE clients in Waxhaw through Waxhaw Entrepreneurs, just so you'll know. We have that, and all of that's free of charge to the business people of Waxhaw. And the last but not least is Ron Zimmerman. Ron has been on committees before, but we feel for this particular committee that he could be used on other committees. So I'm open. I've got the team members here. Any of us will be more than happy to talk to you.
Okay, well, first of all, thanks for doing the legwork and doing this initial assessment.
These guys did it. I'm proud of them.
At this time, I'd like to throw it open to the board to ask questions about specific candidates in your assessment. We're not making an assessment or an evaluation at this time, but I'm sure the board has more questions. So I'll start over on this side. Jim, do you want to ask any questions at this point?
This is too much for me to ask a question right now.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, I have a question for Nicholas Tarleton. I had a question mark by him, and you said possible. So how did you gauge possible to solid candidate? Because I'm coming up with, when I went through these and compared each one, so what was your thought on that?
The thought on that was that he could have very easily fit into a solid candidate, but he is working in downtown Charlotte right now, and he was concerned as to whether he could make all the meetings. And I know we had a situation like that on the ERC, so that's why I said possible.
Okay, and also on David Clough,
David,
I had a question mark on that one, it's the same question of why, is there something similar to that with time?
no, we just felt like that the ones that are marked solid was better
Okay.
than if you really study their applications, and if you study their resumes that were sent in, and trying to match all the characteristics, and this was discussed, and the people that we had discussing this, we turned it upside down, sideways, backwards, forwards, etc. And we felt like that after ranking these things 2 or 3 different times, Commissioner, that we gave you the best possible solid candidates. And then as you get into this, each of you get into this, it is your decision to say that cloth is better than one or the other, or however. This is strictly the way we think, based on our business experience of interviewing and hiring and putting people out on the firing line to deliver the desired results. If this was a business, it is a business, but this is a volunteer position. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
May I ask something about Commissioner Stewart's question about Mr. Tarleton? He could easily be a very solid candidate.
Hang on a second, Earl. Would you come up to the microphone so we can get it recorded?
Nick Tarleton could very easily be a very solid candidate, but a couple of the other things that went into the thinking. Nick is a relatively new parent with a small child, and that creates particular circumstances in someone's life. Don and I know Nick fairly well from serving with him on the ERC. Besides his financial skills, Nick has a lot of downtown experience. On the ERC, Nick did a great deal of work in the leakage studies, so he understands the money going out of Waxhaw. 4 years ago with Nick was one of the co-people working on the potential revolving credit loan for new businesses here in Waxhaw, and several other things about business owner surveys and things. So Nick has that background, but it was the ability to commit, and we looked at Nick as being a potential resource for the advisory board, that he would gladly serve and we were also looking for some new ideas. We didn't want to keep baking the same cake.
Thank you. Commissioner Fitzgerald? Commissioner Burrow?
Yeah, I'd like just to say that in reviewing all the applications, those that the committee has recommended as solid candidates, I would agree 100% with them. And looking at the 4 that were presented as possible, in my estimation, Mr. Whelan, I've met 7 or 8 of these people that I would say should be put on the committee, and I think that would make us a good solid 9.
We have, we at the committee also, if I may take this time, the comment was brought up in a committee, and in fact, Mr. Cook brought it up, and we all thought it was a great idea. People come and go for whatever reasons, and I believe the committee is responsible for having a membership of 9. We feel that the commissioners might want to consider 1 or 2 at-large positions in case something happens. Then one of those can move up. And so we would like to throw that out to you. Any comments on that from any of you folks? Okay. We feel like that would be something that, even though it wasn't in the original rules and guidelines, but may want to consider going forward.
The other comment I had was the balance in the experience of all the different candidates. It's just across the board, the work you guys did recruiting people, finding people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Hunt?
Thank you. On? Yeah. So I have a question about Mr. Giovanelli. Well, is he currently still serving as our property manager for the town? And would that affect that role at all? Because I know he does a great job for us on that, so. Okay, but it wouldn't have any conflict, okay. And I think the other 2 were answered with the other commissioners' questions, so again, thank you all for your work.
Neil Gaiman, does he have the time? Brewery's open 7 days a week from,
He wants to be involved. He believes in Waxhaw, and he believes in.
I understand that, but
No,
that wasn't the question.
He had, when it was discussed with him, he had the time. Now, was he called today? The answer is no. But
Okay.
he assured he had the time and would make the time. So he's that interested in it. And I think the other thing is, he tells, he's a reference for SCORE. When someone has a question about what is it really like to go through from the start to the finish, he'll talk with anybody on the phone. He will sit down and face-to-face with them, whatever the case may be, because he firmly believes in small business.
As a reference for SCORE, he's also went through the facade grant program
He did.
as part of opening his business, which
That's
brings
another
a whole
big
nother
question.
set of experiences. So I'm not questioning.
No, I know you're not. No, but that's a good question. That's a good question. I should have mentioned that.
Do we have any other questions for the OAC at this time?
I have a comment. Dave, you messed me up. Sorry, my scoring, you messed up my scoring.
Yeah, I just scribbled them out too here, like, okay, let's make sure he really means that. Yeah. That's a compliment to you, David.
Yeah.
If you want to add something, come on up so we get it on tape.
There are just a couple of other things that the OAC discussed specifically with the Main Street Advisory Board that we want to pass along as part of our thinking. We recognize that the volunteer program in Waxhaw is certainly being elevated to a much higher level. That's why the seeking of a different type of candidate, people with different skills, experiences, attitudes, and truly going from one league to the next step up. And some of the things that we talked about with that we think is critical for the Main Street Advisory Board more than any committee that's ever been in Waxhaw is that as a board, you recognize they need a very specific training module. As commissioners, each of you have gone through conferences, things. Two of you spoke last night about coming back from really good conference in Raleigh. Think about how that helped you. And think about what this advisory board will need in order to step up and truly apply their skills and experience. That training is essential. And we don't think that it can be piecemeal. It can't be one person training this guy today and that woman the next day. It really needs to be something coming from this board with direction. Here's training. Here's what we expect, because you're getting a level of candidate here that doesn't want to mess around. They have a life to get on with, and they have critical skills, and they don't want to just waste time. So this was a big part of the OAC's discussion.
So did you ask them, are they willing to invest 2 to 3 days in being educated?
That was part of it, yes. We have hit them with that. We said, we can't tell you what it is, but are you willing to make the commitment? For example, Dr. Susan Davis, in her role at South University, Kurt White and myself spoke with her for an hour and a half. And besides bringing diversity, ethnic diversity and gender diversity to the group, she understands what that will be. So one of the things we talked about was, as a board, that you get that commitment from those people. Because, and we've told them that this is just a step towards that. And most of them said, we need more information. And I just wanted to leave that with you, that what is your commitment to training that could be passed along from you to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, sir?
Well, one other question. I think I know the answer to this. And I'm assuming you, after going through this, you sat down with Kurt, and this mirrors his set of recommendations as well.
Yes, we had a sheet very similar to this.
Okay.
Sat down, and I said, okay, we feel this. Kurt agreed. We feel this. Kurt agreed.
He feels comfortable
He
with
feels
your
very
recommendations.
comfortable. It was amazing. It was amazing. So,
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
very much. Appreciate it.
I've got one before you make the appointments. Since this is the initial appointments, with the rules you adopted, the State Main Street Advisory Board wanted a longer committee term, so we have it staggered with 3 members serving, we call it a 4-year term. I think we anticipated appointing these a little, it'll be called a 4-year term, but all the terms, I would recommend them ending June 30th, the appropriate year. That way, they'll go with all the other appointments. But you'll have 3 for a 4-year term, which will be really 3 years and 8 or 9 months. 3 for a 3-year term, and 3 for a 2-year term. So just whenever you get ready to make the appointments, remember that nuance that we have this initial time and won't in the future.
Don, did any of the candidates indicate a term limitation? Okay. Okay. Okay, board. Let's have some discussion, some consensus. I know, at least on the solid candidates, I know Commissioner Burrow, you are comfortable with all.
I'm comfortable with all 8 solid candidates.
Let's just start there for a moment,
Okay.
okay? Anybody want to comment on that or have any discussion about that? Commissioner Stewart?
I have for Roy Sansbury,
Yes.
I had question mark on him, and actually I came up with the same, pretty much, the solid candidates when I went through everything today, except for I have a question with Roy Sandsberg versus James Whalen. To me, James was more qualified than Roy.
Okay.
When doing my comparison, writing my notes and everything, he seemed to be more qualified.
I worked 15 years with Jim, and he's my neighbor, so I'm not going to comment. I'll stay out of this. I have to recuse myself from that discussion. But he's a good candidate. Anyone else?
I'm in agreement with Commissioner Burrell that, the 8 solid candidates pretty much seem to fit the bill. And then the 9th one, in my opinion, want to go for the 9th one?
I would say Jim Whelan.
Right, that would be my 9th one.
So Paul? Commissioner Warner, the 8 solids plus Jim Weiland?
I'm good with all the above, yes.
Okay, so if we then have reached consensus on a slate, I need a motion to suspend Rule 32 of our Rules of Procedure so we can approve a slate of candidates as one slate. I'll entertain that motion at this point in time. Mayor Pro Tem Hunt?
Do we need to determine the terms with this?
We need a motion to approve a slate, and then we can list the terms, but we need the motion
Individuals, okay.
to suspend the rules.
I'll make the motion to suspend the rules, rule number 32.
Okay, we have a motion to suspend Rule 32 so we can approve a slate of candidates. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. We now have a slate of 9 candidates. I don't have any magic formula for year 2, 3, and 4. We could just go straight down the list, one from the top, one from the bottom, et cetera, so we don't discriminate one way or another against the early alphabet or the end alphabet. I'm open to suggestion. Chaplain, is there any rhyme or reason as to how we do it?
That's completely up to the board's discretion.
Does anybody have a preference?
Could I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
I mean, it appears that the availability is a factor that went into determining who these people were.
Mhm.
And to me, the shortest people would be the most critical for availability, would go for the shortest terms.
Okay.
Just throws it back on the committee, honestly.
Does the committee have a recommendation on how to split the terms? Okay. Yes, please.
My only concern or recommendation is just that, looking at the talent level of all of them, there was a mix of some with real estate, some with finance, that you balance that out, that you don't have, that just by the luck of the draw or anything, that you don't end up with a bunch of finance skills with a 4-year term, and you might lose some of the real estate expertise in a 2-year term, that it balance out if by chance they choose not to maybe run again or want to be.
So since you're intimately familiar with this list, how would that list look to you?
I wish I had known. I would have brought my book. I don't have my notes. Based on what you had, I mean, do you have, when you were were reading off the finance and the real estate. That would be the only two.
So, Chaplain, can we approve the slate and come back and modify the dates when we have that input, or are we not allowed to do that? Since they put that thought into it.
Normally, I would say no, but they aren't. Warren asked me that earlier, and now I've had more time to think, so thank you for the
told me
additional.
no.
I told him no, and then now I'm
So
thinking,
how do you
why not?
figure out how to say yes?
I figured out how to say yes because there's no ending term. You appoint it and just make that point part of your motion and say, we'll confirm at
We
the
can
next
confirm
meeting.
on the next.
And I'd even put, even by consent agenda.
Okay.
I thought about it a little bit more, and none of these terms are going to end before you make the appointment. You just need to do that in the near future.
So the motion would be to approve the slate of 9, list the names with,
With a supplemental recommendation, I'd say for a consent agenda, because it can always be removed, with the terms of all the slate members on the next regular meeting agenda.
okay, so does anyone want to make that motion as stated?
As stated, I'll make the motion.
So we have a motion as stated, and I think it would be great if Chaplain restated it so Melody gets it in the minutes, just for clarity.
Great. This was a motion to approve the slate as presented
Of 9 candidates.
of the 9 candidates, which were the 8 recommended and approved as solid candidates, and the addition of James Whelan. So that is all 9 of the candidates that are approved by slate, with the terms to be approved at a subsequent meeting to be placed on the consent agenda.
So we have a motion on the table by Commissioner Burrow. Any further discussion?
Just one question. Are we going to rely on Dave to do that? The committee's going to do the 4-3-2 years? As a group?
They will come back with the list and get it so it can be presented on the consent agenda. Sure, of course. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Melody, do you have all the names, or do you want me to read those out? Susan Davis, all right, I'll read them out. Susan Davis, Sandra Digman, Shane Frazier, Neil Gaiman, Timothy Giovanella. There we go. And I've taught them numerous times. Craig Miller, Laura Rogers, Roy Sansbury, and James Whelan.
Okay, we have the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. OAC, thank you very much. Okay, next item on the agenda, where's my agenda, is a discussion, perhaps some potential action on updates to the rules of procedure and the roles and work plans of town's various boards and committees. So, the last meeting, we had a discussion around some of this. What I did was, just for clarification, I put 2 or 3 charts together just to remind people, or remind us what some of the issues are. From the OAC, they raised a very specific issue, and I can't read it as well from here, about given that they are going through and evaluating candidates, their preferred method of operation is to not have anybody from the Board of Commissioners in the room, go through it, and then present it back to us, much like they did tonight. Solid, possible, not for this committee, et cetera. And they just feel that that's a more effective way for them to operate. From the Park, Culture, and Recreation Committee Chair, while they are looking for direction, one of his big points was, and I think we discussed this last time, was regardless of what you decide, the opportunity for a board chair to come and to present to the full board is something that he feels has been missing and would greatly appreciate that. And the answer to both those questions, it's really our board decision. I checked with Chaplin to make sure that we had nothing in any rule anywhere or any statutory requirement for any of these appointed committees, not statutory committees. So that's truly up to us as we go through and look at what changes, if any, we want to make. So rules of procedure. The suggestion, we got 3 items. We aren't going to be able to get through them tonight, but we have to develop a work plan between now and the end of the year to get to these things. Rules of procedure. We've had questions about the rules of procedure for every committee, and so the suggestion was a work session on rules of procedure for each committee to clarify roles and responsibility and clarify the board liaison. So the question to the board is, we got to schedule a work session for that. When do you want to do it? Is November 7th adequate time to prepare? And again, I'm not trying to be a taskmaster as much as I'm looking at the timing of this. When you get to rules of procedure, you get to work plans, you get to both for historic preservation and park and rec, and then you get to the 6 to 8 vacancies that we are creating and going to the OAC and the recruitment process. We got a lot of things that are cascading and building up. And so does the board have an appetite for a November 7th work session where specifically we look at not the planning board, not the Board of Adjustment, not the ABC board, but the OAC, most likely the Parks and Rec, and the, I'm trying to think of the other, historic, and look at rules of procedures that are in place and what changes do we want to make and agree to it. Does that make sense? And what we can do then is work with the appropriate staff through Warren to make sure we get all that documentation to us and have plenty of time to look at it and study it. Does that make sense? Do we have an appetite for it? Does anybody have a better suggestion? Warren's ready to give us the answer.
I think that's a lot to bite off. I think we're going to need more time to do it right. If
We got a lot to bite off. I know. That's why I'm putting it out here.
So by more time, you mean more than a longer work session?
I mean, maybe the second meeting in November.
Oh, you mean to get prepared for that? Okay. So that puts us into
November
Thanksgiving
20th.
week.
Yeah, Thanksgiving. That's fine.
yeah, the Monday before, because we moved the meeting to Monday. 21st, okay.
So are we comfortable with that? Okay. Okay.
How many total meetings are we talking about? You said one for
One,
each
it's just the amount of work to get those in place, actually solicit the input from each of the board members, and then actually having a session where these are some of the suggested changes that we would like or dislike, and have a discussion about it. So it's probably more time to just think about it and get our input in. So just one work session, though.
You were talking about one for each committee, is the way I heard.
Sorry, no, I wasn't thinking of it that way. I always get nervous when the town manager is frowning at the whole board here.
I'm just thinking that each one of those boards that you mentioned have a meeting between now and November, or now and when we would do that, meaning they would have an opportunity to discuss some of that amongst themselves.
Well, the Historic Preservation Committee currently can't meet because they don't have a quorum.
Okay.
So we boxed them into a corner. And so we got to do some work as a board, which is in the next item. So they would not have a meeting. Park and Rec, probably, if they so chose to meet with where they are. But we could suspend that for temporarily if we wanted to. And then the OAC, if we give them direction to, they would be the likely one to have a meeting, just simply because the amount of recruiting they have to do, they have to get some stuff going forward. And their rules of procedure were recently modified, and they can operate, I believe you could operate under the current ones. So that answers that question. Okay? Okay. Work plans. As you can see on the board, now, and again, I just did this, if we were doing the first one and the first item, the first meeting, then this would be the second meeting, so we'll just keep pushing this stuff back. But Historic Preservation Commission is impacted in two ways. We have a new comprehensive plan, which is, it has a new rewrite of what we mean by historic preservation. So we have to help clarify what we want the Historic Preservation Commission to do. Probably would would obviously feed the rules of procedure as well, although a lot of that is statutory. Parks, Culture, and Recreation, they have a responsibility for the art policy. They have some work to do on the police community room and the, what was approved last night. They, as we've discussed, need some direction and input on a realistic work plan, and part of that comes from, I think we have a duty to the Park and Rec Director to ask her to weigh in at an appropriate time as well as to where does, if anywhere, she need any citizen input at this point in time. And as I was reflecting on this, if you think about where we are as Park and Rec, we're doing a lot of facility work. The contract with the WAA covers most of our policy work at this point in time, and that's a contractual license agreement that's in place. We don't run programs per se. We have an events team that does some other things. So right now, what would be typical for a Park and Rec, we're not at that place yet. And that needs assessment, that community planning aspect of it is something that has evolved to a different state. But, you know, we have two committees that need our help. And I just threw out there that, you know, we're a board of 6, divide by 2, 3 take one, 3 take another, and come back to the board with, you know, here's some suggestions so we can get a good, robust discussion about it. But again, because there are committees, we got to do the work, not staff. I mean, we got to give some direction, other than some input from Natalie in terms of, you know, where she needs the sounding board. So, are we up for this? Warren, given the workload, and you've got probably more experience, wise to push those two work efforts into the December meeting then? Or
The first one, we could do the end of November, and then the second one, first meeting in December.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll push you for that.
Okay.
I need to sit down with staff and some others just to gauge, what does this look like and how much work is this going to take?
Yeah, no, I get.
But I think we can I'm hopeful we can make that work in that time frame.
As a board, how do we want to take 6 and divide by 2? Does anybody have a preference as to which one they work on? I mean, it's 3 and 3.
Tell me what the 2 are again.
Historic
First.
and Park.
Oh, okay.
I'll work on, I prefer historic preservation.
Okay.
Myself, too.
Okay.
I prefer Park.
Arts.
I'll let you make your choice, and then I'll take the other one.
I'll go historic.
Okay. So we have, just for sake of minutes, we have Commissioner Fitzgerald, Burrell, and Mayor Pro Tem Hunt on historic preservation, and Commissioner Warner, Commissioner Stewart, and myself on Park and Rec. Okay? And we'll shoot for the first meeting in December. And then lastly, backfills. And at this current time, we have 2 alternate positions that have not been filled on the Board of Adjustments. Historic Preservation Committee, we have 2 with a potential of 3, a third one having to be filled. The point is the OAC would need to go out and get a slate of candidates that surpasses 3. The OAC is 1, and depending upon where Ms. Settles lands in terms of historic versus OAC, could be possibly a second one, because you're operating at 4 right now. Parks, Culture and Recreation is sitting at 2 at this point in time. It takes time to go solicit for candidates, and so the question to the board, do we have an appetite to encourage the OAC at this point in time to go out and start the recruitment process and begin to get us slates of candidates that would come back to the board by the end of December for these committees. And again, sticking with the fiscal year term expirations, the June 30th term expirations, as they fulfill the existing roles.
Because otherwise historic preservation can't even have a meeting because they can't have a quorum. So it's getting to a point that they're inactive. They're going to be inactive till January?
We can prioritize it and put historic first. Okay. Are we comfortable giving direction to the OAC to? Just
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart?
Good.
Okay, everybody's comfortable with that. OAC, do you have any questions other than committing to this? Could you come to the microphone, please?
The one OAC vacancy that we have, not including what might or might not happen with Ms. Settle, but we have a candidate right now that we are ready to bring forward on that particular one that we've all met with, vetted, et cetera, and are ready to discuss it. And so we can get that information to Melody or however y'all want to handle that. So we could do that as early as November if that's what you prefer. Is that okay?
You have a list of things to do. How you want to bring them back to the board is
Okay.
up to your discretion.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Well, that pretty much gives us something to do in November and December. Okay, last item on the agenda. Is a discussion of protocol for the board, relationship to protocol of Town Board of Commissioners. This agenda item was requested by a couple of board members. We're 9 months into, and I didn't know how to start this, so I'll start it with a little, get the ball rolling with a little discussion. We're 9 months into this new board, and it's a good time to reflect on how well we're doing, where we're having success against our rules of procedure and protocols, how we are enabling the town manager and therefore him enabling his staff, and of course the board, and are there things that we can do differently to operate more efficiently. For 4 of us, it was about this time last year when Town Manager Wood came forward with his 120-day review. It was a little bit earlier, but 120-day review, and led us in a session like this, an assessment of how we operate. These things are somewhat humbling because you learn how you could do better, and by statute, just like we told the OAC, we have to do this in a public forum. And so we have to discuss how well we're doing, and as importantly, how well we're not doing in certain areas and things that we could work on publicly. And that's always a fun process, the old public assessment. And I hope we can approach this tonight in the same professional manner that we did last year. So a couple of just introductory thoughts on my end, and then I'll turn it over to you guys. Last year, the manager challenged us to embrace our form of government. As our charter clearly states, the board's a body of 6, and we are working on as we've expanded from a town of 3,000 to 16,500 on the complexity of legislative and policy development and enactment that has grown in orders of magnitude and complexity for this town. And of course, at times we have some stumbles, but in walking this through with Warren earlier this week, the informational meeting approach is allowing the board to be more informed. And interestingly enough, being adopted by a couple other governing bodies within the county as a best practice. And so as we work on that and when acted properly, it seems to be enabling communication. And it's something I can honestly say from my year and a half as a commissioner was something we didn't have, and I think it is an enabler. The work sessions, they are a time commitment. I'll let you comment, Warren. They seem to be working very favorably.
I think they're definitely working well for staff, and it seems like the goal isn't to have short board meetings, but it seems like it has made those more efficient. We're able to get into a lot more detail about many more items in the work sessions, cover a lot of ground.
Okay, good. One of the question areas that has come up is how I manage the meetings. It's my duty per the protocol to manage this, and I have no qualms about it. I'm sure I make mistakes along the way. Last night was a good example of it. I made a spot decision. I looked at Melody and shook head on the time because I didn't think it was appropriate to cut off Earl and Charlie last night as they were presenting something very positive about the community and a positive program. Those are things that fall on my shoulders. However, I want to remind everybody, if you're not happy with how I'm ruling, you can appeal at that time directly to me, and if you don't like how I react to that, you can appeal to the board and overrule me. And that's the process, that's the rules, and I am keenly sensitive to always trying to do better, but we have avenues to correct that if you're upset with me on that. From time to time, some of you have raised issues to me. I'm happy to work with each and every one of you on the individual issues. My 2 rules of thumb have always been, if it's a people issue, the best place is to talk with the person. However, I do have one very hard, fast rule. If it is an issue where I think there's an exposure to the town or could put the town at risk, I go directly to Chaplain and/or Warren and ask them to dispose of it properly to make sure the town's risk-free. And I've had 3 or 4 of those. I make no bones about it. I just come, and Chaplain, you know it, I come directly to you and say, please handle, and then handle the resolution of it. Lastly, probably where we have some work to do, this is a tough one. Yes, we support as one body, but yes, we also legislate, make decisions, and we don't always agree. 4-1, 3-2 votes. I mean, those are things that are going to happen. And how we take that forward and keep our story straight, but keep our individual values straight is always going to be a challenge, and I just encourage us to continue to work on that along the lines of what our protocol and procedures call out. But I thought I would kick off there and then turn it over to you all to share what you want to share in terms of relationships and board protocol and what we could do better. So
I would like to take, Mike. So, as the mayor started off his speech with, that several board members requested this, I was one of the board members to request this, and I didn't write out a long spiel. I kind of have it in my head where I'm at with this, so I'll just kind of say it from the head and from the heart, basically. I have been honored and humbled to sit in this seat for the past 3 years. When I ran for this election, or this office, I met with several people, and one of the first persons I met with told me, you know, I'm here to interview you and see how you do and what I think of you. And at the end of that 2.5-hour discussion, he said, I just want to pass this along to you, to thine own self be true. And yeah, I'm definitely with that. Recently, and over the past month or so, there have been some questions raised about the way I conduct myself. And they weren't only raised to me, which is one thing, and I can take those questions, but they were raised to other folks on this board through email, through text, and in my behavior. So I felt like that it's time to address this in a public forum. The question was even raised that I don't like to do things in the light, and that's not the case. I fully believe in North Carolina statutes and open meetings and to bring stuff out there. Again, in the past 3 years, I believe I've conducted myself, go to the tape, look at every meeting we've had with, you know, respect, and to other board members, to the staff, to the staff, and to everyone. And I just, to be questioned on it in that manner, it kind of took me aback. So again, if there's a question and we want it in an open meeting, bring it out in open meeting, and I'm happy to stand up and address that question, defend myself, defend my fellow board members, and move on. Again, we all agreed to these procedures, these protocols. I didn't have to have these in place when I came on this board to behave and act the way I do, but this certainly cements this process into place. Again, very honored to sit on this board, and if there's any questions, I'm here to answer them. Thank you.
thank you. Commissioner Warner, do you have anything?
I've read it. I agree with it. I'm all for it.
Okay. Commissioner Stewart?
I have some questions. I too, like John, am very honored to sit on this board, but I will tell you, and I'll be very honest with you, it's been a difficult 9 months for me. Not really sure what the dynamics is. There's been a lot of things that have happened out in public. I'm not going to go into those. There's been a lot of things that's happened in closed session that shouldn't have happened, and it's changed my perspective. Not that I'm going to give up or I'm going anywhere, but I think we all know some of the things that have happened. There's maybe a different opinion of some of the things in closed session that maybe seem okay to some folks and not okay to me. But I think some things need to change.
Well, the first thing that needs to change is for everybody, if you see something that you don't like, that you follow the rule of protocol and bring it to the board's attention. Because I can't manage a meeting if everybody's going to be in secret and then disappears for 2 weeks. So I'm going to challenge every one of you, and I'm going to challenge Chaplain and Warren. If you see something, bring it to my attention. I'll pause, stop, and recognize it and address it. But that's my expectation of you. And yes, my filter is different from everybody else's filter on this board. Whoever is presiding at the meeting has a different filter. I guarantee it. And so it really, we have to be respectful that everybody has a different filter and have the courtesy of bringing it forward, all of us. I'm not picking on anybody. If you see something, just pause, take a deep breath, and bring it to my attention. That's all I ask for.
There's another aspect to this that I'd like to add, because along with Commissioner Hunt, I too was accused of discrimination. And the other aspect of that is that takes away time from the mayor, takes away time from the attorney, adds cost, takes away time from the town manager, takes away time from this board doing good, positive things. And I think it's wrong. I just think it's wrong. We're adults. We need to act like adults. When I'm wrong, I admit it. You don't. And there's been never an apology from you for anything that you've said to any of us. And if you did, we could turn ourselves around and act like a group of adults and be a board and move forward. I'm open to it. Please be open to it.
Other comments?
The biggest
Commissioner
thing I
Fitzgerald.
see is we're all adults here. We all can be friends with each other, and we should be. We have the right in our seat to put our opinion to what our citizens feel. At the end of that discussion, and we have a vote, it's decided on whether you win or lose. That's it. There's no more discussion about it. You don't throw it up again. You regurgitate. Don't regurgitate again. It's over. And then when anybody asks you in public, this is what the board decided. It may not have been my decision, but that's what the board decided. We work as one. We don't work as 6 individuals. We work as one. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? I had an interesting discussion today with Representative Craig Horn. And one of the things that is very positive, I had offered to him that if you're going to go and have the long legislative session, I think it'd be awfully nice if you listened to the municipalities before you went up, and I'd be happy to host a meeting, the mayor and town manager, or the mayor and the town administrator of Western Union County for him, Representative Brody and Senator Tucker, and thought it was a great idea, and we got into a discussion, and I shared a situation from last night. I said, you have to understand our storyline, that we can, and I said, my fear is with 2 of the 3, they don't understand how a municipality works. You have a robust debate, you have a robust discussion, you can agree to disagree, but then you decide and you move forward. And we used the example from last night. We approved a comp plan that talks about how we have to address donut holes. We had a vote last night. I totally respect the vote 4-1, and I said there are potential issues with that particular situation, but it doesn't take away from the story of the town wants to address globally the donut hole situation. And he said, it's all in how you act as a town board. I respect, and I will work with my fellow legislatures to respect the differences of opinion at a town board level, and respect also that the town has an overarching strategy. And his advice was, you have to work that out amongst yourselves, that you can disagree, but you can agree on the story that's in the best interest of the town to the legislature. And he said, don't forget it, because he said, for the last 6 or 7 years, you've been doing nothing with the legislature, and you've left it up to us, and you've been doing nothing with the county, and you've left it up to the county to just interpret. He said, so if you're not doing it, you're hurting yourselves. And again, that's not a reflection on last night's vote, it's just a reflection of how we have to have the adult conversation to respect whatever anybody's opinion is, and then also respect the town storyline. So it was time well spent with Representative Horn just to kind of talk through it and get his perspective, because they watch, they look. He mentioned some towns that they watch, and it's very easy to rule not in their favor because of the way they behave. And he said, you guys have risen above where you used to be. He said, just keep it there. And he said, but that doesn't mean that you cannot have your individual thoughts, opinions, views. So again, I think we all 6 of us, town manager, the clerk, and our attorney can all operate that way, and we just need to stay focused on it. Any other comments? Well, if there's no other comments, I will certainly entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed to adjourning?